Okay, greetings all. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm Chris Cummings from Datera, and I'm joined by Chris Tinker, who is Chief Technologist of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I'm also joined by Hal Woods, who is Chief Technology Officer for Datera. So what we're going to do is go through a little bit on the new direction for enterprise software-defined storage, why the two companies are working together so tightly, and what we think that this can help you with in your infrastructure. We want to encourage you to ask as many questions as possible because it's rare that we get time with brains of this magnitude, and we want to put them to use for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Hal. And again, keep asking those questions.
Well, hi guys, I'm Chris Tinker with Hewlett Packard.
Hal Woods, Chief Technology Officer at Datera.
We know I've been asked a lot about why bring in Datera into Hewlett Packard, what we're doing with our partnership. So if I were to fast forward right quick to a slide here, it's about our core strategy. Now, HP's core strategy is to simplify hybrid IT. And to do the simplification of hybrid IT, we also have to look at how we empower the intelligent edge and have the strength of services and capabilities to essentially bring new workloads and new value propositions to customers that are wishing to transition to a software-defined or take advantage of new workloads and how those workloads can actually be positioned on intelligent infrastructure. And the intelligent infrastructure is another key point of Hewlett Packard. So let me index that slide one second here. So if you think about where customers' journeys are going, the journey of how do I get to an AI-driven ecosystem? And the AI-driven ecosystem really talks about how we have intelligent infrastructure. Now that intelligent infrastructure from Hewlett Packard comes from our infrastructure, our plumbing, then the actual KPI telemetry data that we're taking with AI engines. These are the AI engine that creates an ability to create inference mechanisms to drive value back to the business to facilitate automation and orchestration. So if you look at the customer journey as it represented on the slide here, 5-10 years ago, everybody was about standardization. And you look at, over the past several years, it was always figuring out ways that we can orchestrate and automate. And with automation, there comes a level of how do we embrace robotic process automation? Now, again, with HP, infrastructure, intelligent infrastructure, that only takes us so far. With various products and platforms from HP, we look for disruptive technologies that actually can run on HP's equipment, run on our infrastructure to bring that value, that capability of AI-driven ecosystem to our customers. So that, of course, gives our vision of the autonomous data center. Now, that autonomous data center has a key engine, and that engine is around InfoSight. InfoSight, if you follow HP, you'll notice in the past, about 6 months ago, we announced the branch of InfoSight going from just our storage arrays, 3-part, Nimble, what have you, and expanding that into our servers. When I say servers, I'm talking about the ProLiant, the most secure servers on the planet, as well as our density optimized platforms, our Apollos, all the way up into our bladed architectures. So now that we actually have the ability to look at predictive analytics, looking at ecosystems of infrastructure, mapping out whether you're looking at interoperability challenges, firmware anomalies, driver, interoperability with operating system and application and server stacks, mapping all of that, looking at the entire install base, and how do we drive that value back to our customers' automation? Again, infrastructure is not enough. You want to run data services. So I'm thinking about data services with like block and file and object. We need to be able to provide an automated data services platform that actually can benefit from the intelligent infrastructure of HP's providing. So again, all of this is really around enhancing the customer experience. As you see there at the bottom, that's all about this entire ecosystem, is to build a better together story.
Well, and I think it's key.
You had some experiences, right, when you were during your time at HPE.
Yep.
So.
Well, I think one of the things that Chris kind of mentioned here is HP provides an entire ecosystem, from servers, storage, networking, consultative services, all of the support globally, every country out there.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, interestingly enough, right, we love working with HP because it gives us just a little bit of reach into those areas that otherwise we couldn't do. Plus we round out, right? We provide some capabilities that maybe HP can benefit and your customers can certainly benefit. So we're thrilled to have that sort of relationship to get that global reach, that complete offering to your customers.
It's a value to our customers, and our customers are looking at, how do they adopt cloud automation? How do they embrace essentially no longer the speeds and feeds, but more along the delivering of a service, creating a resilient, durable level of service for their end customers, and be able to understand the actual reliability, the comfortability that comes with an enterprise class ecosystem that delivers essentially reliable, durable services.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, right? We talk about the services we deliver, but it's really driven by the customer, right?
Oh, yeah.
The customer needs to move at a rate and pace that simply the old way of doing it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, if you think about, look at operationalizing. If you're an enterprise customer in an enterprise landscape, I mean, we look at an operational aspect of how do I deliver services to my business. And if I look at delivering a service to my business, you have processes, procedures, and operational guidelines. And being able to look at, when you want to provide a new service, and maybe it's a database or an application, whatever, but be able to provide that service. What happens when the platform becomes saturated, or maybe resources become depleted? Then who is actually helping provide an ability to say, what is the recommendation engine? What capability, what functionality, what feature, what resource do I need to add? What service do I need to detract? What operationalizing, how do I simplify that? So go back to our core HP strategy, simplify hybrid IT. And now our core strategy to simplify hybrid IT is more than just looking at what we can do with our own native products, but looking at how we can partner with ISVs such as yourselves, so that we can take your technology, working with you as a collaborative product development to facilitate how we can be better together to deliver a differentiated user experience for our customers.
And provide all of the support and put a wrapper around that really represents the HP brand, which is the most trusted brand out there.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. So if fast forward another slide here. So what is the vehicle because I get asked this question a lot. Now, what is the vehicle? How we bring ISVs such as yourselves and that are a disruptive technology? How do we actually embrace that with HP? How do we bring that to market? How do we create that enterprise experience? Now, Datera is an enterprise platform. It has enterprise durability, reliability. It has all the services that are needed for block ecosystems and object ecosystems we'll get to in a minute. But if I look at automation orchestration, we need to be able to create an enterprise a vehicle that actually does certifications, that does support delivery, that creates build models for operations, but we also want to enable our channel partners, the partners that we go to market with, so that they're enabled to be able to size, to be able to look at a particular workload and have confidence that when they create an ecosystem, or create and instantiate a new offering, that offering is going to deliver to the customer's expectations.
Absolutely.
So that's what HP Complete does for us. It's a model to bring it's a vehicle that allows us to bring partners into the ecosystem, create the governance, the compliance, and the configurations so we can bring this to market.
Yeah, I mean, no single company anymore can develop every product for every market.
No, we cannot.
So you have to have a way of bringing, technology in, and then deliver that again with the experience that you want the HP customer to have.
True enough.
So let me just clarify, since we had a question come in right on this topic, and a very simple one. Who do I buy this from?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. HP, our channel, so all of our channel providers have access to HP Complete. HP Complete is actually a SKU product. So there's easy reference architectures, our SAs, they're all enabled to have a go-to-market strategy. And of course, there's this process, this vehicle provides all the necessary capabilities to branch the Datera resources in with the HP resources. So you have a single experience with a single go-to-market approach. So essentially, it's the right block solution. So if you look at the top there, that's what this is really going in. Because the next question I get asked, why Datera software-defined block? What about HP's, organic ecosystem. What else do we have on the truck? Well, again, like anything in technology, there's not one solution solving all problems. So, we look at, what does HP have on this truck? We have general purpose platforms, business critical platforms, mission critical platforms. And we create these swim lanes to help us guide a customer. If you have a business requirements, we look at the actual, what are you trying to solve for? What is the value? What is the actual compelling reason? What are the drivers? And then once we understand that, as a partner, our channel and as our SAs, as the technical bench of HP, goes back to what I said earlier about the strength of services, the strength of people to actually be able to deliver these outcomes, is being able to look and understand what the business problems are, what the challenges are, what's the obstacles to change, and understand how can we minimize disruption, maximize time to value. And this is a guiding post for that. General purpose, scale out. If that is a driver of a general purpose, scale out, block with an enterprise performant architecture that has rack level resiliency, then you're looking at a software-defined ecosystem. Datera is such beast for us. It provides a key element for our customers looking for those type solutions. Go ahead and go next slide here.
I think we're going to start transitioning a little bit into some more Datera specifics. So first, understand that when Datera was founded back in 2013, it was not founded by what I'll call a bunch of enterprise storage, guys who'd been doing the same thing for a very long time. It was really founded by the guys that were working in cloud-like environments. So these guys came together and said, what is the storage needed for that cloud-like environment? And so that's what they set out to build. Some of the attributes up at the top. So again, it's cloud-like self-service model, that experience. It uses some of the things you talked about with InfoSight, where how do we use things like machine learning and artificial intelligence to not just see what the customer is doing, but anticipate what the customer needs.
Right.
Those sort of things that oftentimes the customer doesn't even know.
That's right.
There's things that are moving so fast. They're growing rapidly. They're responding to business opportunities or competitive threats. All of those things. They need some intelligence built into the system.
We talk a lot about the simplification of IT. I mean, it's a core strategy of HP's, but at the end of the day, the simplification of IT also makes the technology quite more complex.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We want to provide a simple experience to the customer and the user in how they provision or manage. At the same time, there's a lot going on in the background.
In providing that time to value is absolutely critical. It should not be up to the operations team and it should not be up to the SAs or the actual operation administrator to figure out what the pain point is. They want the engine to be able to provide some intelligence, some aspect of where should they go to solve this problem. Should they add resources? Should they look at workloads? Should they create a swim lane architecture to figure out maybe they ought to do QoS? Maybe they ought to create an actual cloud-like experience. So when they do a policy or if you look at classification and categorization of your certain policies and services, create an actual rules engine. And Datera facilitates that capability.
Absolutely. And then if you look at the next bullet, it's performance, it's features, it's availability, it's new technology adoption. And I like to point out it's the and of those things, not the or of those things.
Totally agree with you on that.
In many architectures, what you find is you get to choose, right? There's a list, but you get to choose one or two. And for these modern data centers that are moving so quickly, they need all of those things. And it can't be a trade-off between, pick 2 out of 5.
Well, you look at technology in general. I mean, technology is shifting fast. The advent of NVMe, the storage class memory, non-volatile DIMMs, how do you take advantage of this? It's one of the reasons we looked at Datera as a key partner, because our servers have this capability. So we need something to sit on top of the server that actually provides that data services.
Well, one of my experiences, I was 16 years at HP. Chris knows this. Yes, I do. And one of the things I know from that experience is when those guys are building a DL380 or a DL360, which I would claim, I'm not sure of this, but I would claim, are probably the most popular servers in the world.
They are, right? They
are. They take great care and great diligence, but they get access to every technology out there. Everybody wants to work with HP. So when we talk about bringing in new technologies and things like that, HP has access to the entire portfolio and then integrates those into their, again, world-class servers. And then we get access to that, right? And our IP, one of the key kind of capabilities of our IP is that ability to rapidly adopt new technology. The next thing, and this is this notion of 70% reduction in TCO. I'm going to argue that in these cloud environments, these customers that are moving at this pace, right, the historical way of doing it just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Right, and so we're certainly saving lots of money over the historical way of doing it, but really what way I like to describe it is we're enabling the agility of those customers.
I agree with that. I mean, in that TCO comes in multiple dimensions. I mean, there's the dimension of just robotic process automation. I keyed off of it earlier, but that's a core element of a cloud experience. Creating complete automation, and that automation requires a complete and capability of an API interface. So the Datera platform is, I think you have probably even a slide on this, but it's about how we can program that ecosystem.
Absolutely. So one of the things we want to talk about is use cases. What are the use cases that are kind of in this fast-paced, rapidly moving, rapidly evolving ecosystem? So one is what we call digital-first enterprises. These are really the companies that collect and analyze and then monetize information. That's their core business model. And they're moving so quickly, and information is coming at them at such a rapid pace that they need this sort of infrastructure. Next is cloud service providers. They also have this rapid growth, and these can be either software as a service or platform as a service, right? Both those are aspects of that ecosystem. Storage as a service is really about enterprises that are implementing a service model internally, yes. and we can be the storage as a service layer for that. Not really a use case, but it's really a problem for customers, is this notion of multiple deployment models. Every enterprise out there has both legacy and cloud native applications, right? Every enterprise out there is deploying on virtual machines, they're deploying on containers, and they're deploying on bare metal. That creates a significant challenge for them, right? Because they need something it's not a pick or choose, right? Use one solution for this or one solution for that. They need something that tries to bridge all of those environments. And finally, there's the classical application of database, right? In making those databases run faster. Databases are at the core of every business.
They are.
But what we're seeing more and more often is those are being deployed as a service as well, and then demand that.
You talk about those use cases. I think the audience ought to know about databases are like the transactional workload paradigm. And if you think about transactional workload paradigms, the key to how the Datera platform works with the HPE ecosystem, look at our servers we talked about a moment ago, like a DL360, which is a dual socket 10 NVMe cards that is one of the world's fastest production servers. It has a 17 gigabyte per second capability of the PCIe bus. What's interesting about this is that kind of level of density allows us to have an efficient, optimized data density and data utilization for that type of deployment. But at the same respect, being that it's a software-defined ecosystem allows us to take advantage of DL380s, which we can put a lot more density of storage, or even if the look at the future roadmap here, where we're going to be bringing in like the Apollo product lines. The Apollos are density optimized servers. So the collaborative product development, which is under the HP Complete program, allows us to facilitate creating certifications and roadmaps to bring those products in, so that we actually can provide these use cases, but provide an optimized data density location.
Absolutely, and one of the other interesting aspects is because we use these standardized servers, and everybody who's buying HP, I can guarantee, is buying DL360s and DL380s, right? There's a rack out there, right, yes. that has a slot for us.
Yes.
Right? Yes. We actually want to be spread out among the application servers because it provides them a better quality of service.
Distributed data services platform that has the kind of durability that allows us to be rack resilient. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So Hal, before you leave that, the question came in about, okay, so Chris, you just said NVMe. Am I choosing one profile of a server and stick with that, and what's your viewpoint on storage class memory? So I guess it's kind of two questions in one.
Well, actually, let me transition to the next slide because I think that's a good segue, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. So we kind of described 5 pillars of value for Datera. One is this notion of data automation. This is really the ability to live migrate data within the system in response to change. It could be changes can be, maybe I want to improve the performance. Maybe I've got some new capacity or new technology. Maybe it's in response to a failure of some sort.
A change in a policy even.
Absolutely, right? So, we want to be able to move that data within the system, and that system can be, again, like we talked about, can span many racks, can span even data centers. So data automation is one attribute. Enterprise performance, and then you'll see the subtext here of rich data services. In many systems, you get enterprise performance or rich data services. right?
Yeah.
How do you architect, and this is one of the things we believe we've accomplished, so that I can do things like dedupe or snapshot or encryption while delivering that SLO of enterprise performance. Rapid technology adoption. This goes back to, one is, you'll see at the bottom here, all different types of media, right? What we do is we create an inventory in our system of the types of media that are available in the cluster, right? And then map the service level objectives specified in the policies to that different media. So whether it's NVMe or SATA flash or even hard drives or Optane when that's ready for prime time, right? All of those things we can leverage. Not just place some volumes on one and some volumes on another. An individual volume can be spread across those to achieve the right cost or the right performance. Next is data center awareness. There's a school of hard knocks you go to when you fit into these emerging cloud environments that's a little different than traditional storage. One is they're all multi-tenant. Right? There's no such thing as, I've got one application running against my storage system. That storage system is being used for many applications. And if I'm talking about cloud service providers, oftentimes many different tenants.
Absolutely.
And you have to provide the ability to fence resources, all these different things.
And general purpose becomes a wide paradigm.
It does, it does. The next thing is network integration. Used to be that when you deployed a storage system, you said the storage network will look exactly like this.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you fit into that environment. The customer already has a network. You fit into that network environment. And the last is fault domains. All data centers are designed for a certain degree of resiliency and things like that. And one is we're fault domain aware, but as we talked about, right, we want to be rack resilient, row resilient, and in some cases even data center resilient.
Of course.
Right. Those sound like easy things. Writing that software to understand all of that and then ensure, again, back to the data automation, we put the data where it makes sense to achieve that level of resiliency, all that performance. And the last, and I think we've touched on this, is predictive operations. In spite of all these capabilities, right, the customer is simply overloaded with information. Right? You need something that's analyzing all of that information all the time, and then can say, here's our recommendation for how to improve the operation of the system.
Even your system's ability to take and look at an SLA of a particular given service, and if that SLA has a metric of maybe it's a low latency, and the low latency is being exceeded, then the platform has the ability to actually take a rule and provide certain data services as an asymmetrical aspect. So it's able to do this as a rules engine native to the platform without human intervention. It goes back to that essentially self-healing, self-optimizing. That's the key tenet to this product.
Well, one of my favorite examples of that is, imagine I've got a database, right? And I've got the database and I've had some indexes and some logs, right?
Yes.
And it turns out in this case, the indexes are the thing that determines the performance of the whole application. So I set in my policy, I basically say, I'm going to set my indexes to run on the fastest media available, okay? System's up and running, things are going great. All of a sudden, HP comes out with a new generation of servers that incorporates, let's say, some persistent memory technology. Sure. We add one node of those servers. I didn't have to add a whole cluster. I added a single node. And the system automatically recognizes that I've added some new technology that would benefit that particular application.
I think that's a key tenet to the audience that needs to know that the granulation of the capability of the expansion of the product doesn't require a complete data pivot. But you can optimize by simply adding a piecemeal technology and managing the actual data services through automation. The automation takes care of the data placement based on the policy.
And so in this particular case, we would detect that new capability, automatically map that, create a replica on that new technology, and the application performance will improve, and the user had to do nothing. It was all set up by the policies. So when we talk about, how do we save on CapEx, right? Well, if I only had to buy one node instead of 5 or 10 or however many, if saving on OpEx, the administrator set up the policy maybe a year ago, right? And all of a sudden the application just got faster.
That's right, the business SLA is still met.
Yep.
So a question that's related to that, and it sounds like an array user to me. It sounds like my decade at NetApp. The question is, how do I determine the performance needed for my application? And how do I ensure that the application actually gets it? And then I've got a follow-on once we hit that.
Well, I think I love asking customers questions like this. How much performance do you need, right? and even the better one is for the next 3 years. Right. And the answer to the first question is I don't know. And the answer to the second question is you got to be crazy for even asking, right? the one thing I love about our implementation is I tell people, just deploy, right? Make your best guess and deploy, because there's no wrong answer. Because once you're deployed, the system will start telling you, right? And then, because we talked about, I can add new technology, I can scale the system. I simply say, okay, let's look at the analytics, right? What is it telling me? Okay, it says I need to add maybe some faster resources, right? And I add them, and the application just improves. And so you don't have to know, right? Because people don't know, right?
They don't. A lot of times they don't. And those that do, rest assured, a part of the HP Complete program is to make sure we have sizing tools so that we can address maybe the instantiation of a day one exercise is to look at what is the challenge in the business, and we can assess a storage assessment quickly, make some rules, make some opinions on here's the empirical evidence based on an application, based on a particular business, based on the operations team should have an idea. If they do have an idea, we have sizing tools that quickly allow our channel, allows our partners to be able to go to market and go, here's a solution that will deliver the value based on these empirical workloads.
So I want to push on that a little bit, because the challenge customers face, and we talked about this, is they're all multi-tenant.
That's true.
In storage systems, right, if we say, what does one workload look like? We can go, okay, I can, right. Now as I start to add more and more workloads to it, it essentially becomes a random workload. And so
it's not an easy answer. You're right.
Well, I think that's the environment our customers are in.
Yes.
Right, it's complicated.
It is complicated.
And so what you need is flexibility.
Flexibility and an intelligence engine built into a platform that can create insight. And it goes right back to that time to value. Creating an insight, an engine, a rules engine that makes a recommendation based on empirical evidence of what's observed by the platform. So the operations teams can make decisions not by the seat of their pants, but based on empirical recommended analytics.
Yeah. So Hal, the other related question, and Chris for you too, is anytime you have a question about performance, the next question is always about provisioning. Mm-hmm. So the question is basically, I suffer from chronic over-provisioning. How does this new solution help me address that issue of provisioning?
Well, I think, I'll let Chris take this as well, but one of the key things about over-provisioning is, again, people fear that they guess wrong. Right? And so if I fear guessing wrong, what do? I add stuff to it to cover that risk. Because the reason people fear guessing wrong is it's hard to change your mind. Right? The systems historically, basically you make your best guess, right? And you may have a long planning cycle in order to make the best educated guess. Right? And then if you guessed wrong, it might be very difficult, right, to back out of that. One of the things again, this notion of being able to automate data movement within the system in response to, demand or workload or opportunity, right, means that there is no need to over-provision, because you can add the resources you need based on the feedback you're getting, right, over time, non-disruptively, while continuing to deliver the data services and the performance.
I totally second what Hal's talking about here, because with a software-defined approach in this manner, we're able to add capacity or add resources based on an actual profile, based on an observed empirical evidence. As I alluded to a moment ago, we're looking at performance, looking at capacity, but you're able to then take empirical evidence and add resources that actually align to the business data, the actual business's optimization or effective use of that resource. So that allows us to break away from the traditional technical debt approach of here's the building block, and that block is a fixed amount. So in this case, whether it be the actual tactical assets of the servers could be varying degrees of data optimization. Maybe it could be NVMe, it could be SSDs, it could be SATA. You don't have to pick a single platform and use it as a building brick and just keep adding that brick. You can change the brick. These are the functionalities that, with a software-defined, scaled-out architecture, our customers are needing these type of data services and data capabilities.
One of the interesting examples, I think, is I'm going to pick on HCI for just a second, right? Sure. Because HCI oftentimes provides a great solution for a very well-understood environment.
Hyper-converged and infrastructure, absolutely.
But oftentimes they're targeting a specific application.
Sure.
Right? And like our software, like many pieces of software, right? The software changes. Right? So what happens when persistent memory comes out? Right? An application updates and says, I can now take advantage of persistent memory. Right? for my, I upgrade the software and all of a sudden, but I'm stuck on a given piece of hardware, right? So it goes back to, sometimes it's not even us changing, right? It's things outside of us that are changing to take advantage of new technology, but it's locked into infrastructure that can't.
I totally agree with that. HPE, of course, we have a lot of products on the truck. We have a hyper-converged infrastructure, and even then, we actually create swim lanes around where does it make sense. Because you got to think about, would you place a hyper-converged ecosystem with a transactional performant database? Not really. I mean, can it? Well, anything can, but then there's it goes right back to your point. You're going to have pain points, and those pain points become: how do I scale up? How do I scale out? How do I fix these other problems that are inherently a challenge due to the architecture? And the Datera platform provides us an ability to leverage the same infrastructure that's an intelligent infrastructure with advanced data services that provide a value to the customer for these type of workloads that need performance, that need enterprise, that need a scale out architecture that has the durability and reliability that we're looking for.
And so the slide that you're seeing now is really about agility, right? So historically, I've built. This is just so people know, this is my 18th scale-out architecture, right? And I've worked on lots of scale-up architectures. And scale-up architectures were all about predictability, right? The customer knows when they buy that, when they deploy it, exactly what they're going to get. Yep. And there's goodness in that.
There is.
And there's many environments.
And there's a known quantity of the envelopes.
That's right.
Performance envelopes.
Right. But as we talked about, the scale-out data center or cloud data center is more about agility. Right, the ability to adapt, not just adapt, but adapt quickly.
Adapt quickly.
And so, everybody talks about, old versus new, that sort of thing, but it really comes down to, if predictability is the most important attribute, right, there's a great portfolio for that. Mm-hmm. If agility is that most important attribute, I think somebody like Datera is a great fit.
You're right.
So, I hate to pick on things, so I'm going to leave it at, I think there's a place for both.
There is.
Right?
There is.
And HP has a great portfolio for both.
We agree.
So next I want to drill in a little bit on some of the attributes, some of our key pillars. We've talked, I think, in quite a bit of detail, but this notion of data automation is really about saying, I'm going to define an application policy, right, and let the system manage to that policy. But perhaps even more importantly, I can change the policy.
Yes.
And that the way we institute policies is I create an application template. And so let's say I have a database and I need 100 instances of it, right? One is I can instantiate that through my APIs very quickly. Next is, if I want to, I can break those policies into different pieces, or I can say, I'm going to change the attribute, new software release of the application, and I'm going to roll that out, and it's going to automatically change that policy for all the applications, all those instances.
It resonates with me because I've been doing this job for a long time, and as an engineer through and through, I get calls where customers have deployed matter of fact, whether it be a database with a particular patch, and that patch has induced a different behavior. Now all of a sudden, where you have thousands of VMs, the actual write profile has changed due to the actual, maybe it's a library change in the application that caused certain things to change, but it changed a particular workload profile. But if you have a defined swim lane, and that swim lane is able to assume or consume the actual resources, you can change profiles. The interesting thing about this is you don't have to just log into like the Datera platform. You may have maybe you have a cloud management platform, and that cloud management platform has the actual service, and the API it makes an API call down to the actual storage platform to actually align the policy to the service. Right. And this is where I love the platform's capability to be flexible and agile.
Yeah. Well, for example, we work with Kubernetes label-based provisioning, yes. Right? So that's an example of being able to fit into an orchestration engine that's bigger than just the storage, correct. Right? That's when we talk about all of the automation and all those other things, customers have more than storage. They have networking, they have compute, and they certainly have their applications, right? And so while we want to promote certainly our agility, it's really about enabling the customer's agility at that larger level.
How do you fit into that seamless layer of the technology stacks from compute, network, storage, and essentially create that entire full stack of automation without having to have the operations team actually have to pull up the actual storage interface, network interface, That's another, like the Kubernetes analogy is perfect, but any cloud management platform does require these APIs, and this platform provides that. And we are able to tie that back into, for example, HP's InfoSight. It goes back to that intelligent infrastructure. So that's the better together story capabilities.
Absolutely. So next, enterprise performance. So there's two dimensions of performance, right? And I'll call it absolute, can I deliver, 100 microseconds or whatever the number is, pick your number, right? But everybody has a question of, it's really dollars per performance.
Right.
Right.
When you get to down to the CIO level, that's it, we're talking about dollars at that point. Talking about the actual, what is the actual value?
Yeah. And so, we certainly have high performance. So we describe it as we have this 40 microsecond data path plus the attributes of the late media and things like that. And those are very important attributes, but it's really the way we deliver the performance. So the team, and we talked about this diverse background from our founding architects, right? It's really about not doing as much work, right? I used to work back in the classical days, we'll say 20 years ago, right? You had performance whisperers, right? They would optimize the system, right? But nobody could touch their code, right? We took a different approach, and it's really about the power of the processors and the servers that exist in today's world, right? Let us use software techniques where historically it was, twiddling bits down at the very low level and creating what might be brittle infrastructure.
We're in the data path, we get some more into a technical conversation, but I know even with Nick Mellinger talking about the fact that how you guys actually can do the data pipelining to the backing storage, very much like a CPU architecture. Yep. CPUs use pipelining if you're not familiar with that, but you guys have actually embraced that and added that capability to the actual platform's data path, which is, and again, it accelerates and it allows you to deliver these performance numbers that is actually unheard of until just recently. Of course, the advent of NVDIMMs and NVMe cards also help this, but how do you take advantage of that? That's another thing that we have to look at with these technologies.
Yeah, so it's goes back to HP's adoption of technology, right? So faster networking, yes. Right? Whether it be RDMA, things like that. NVDIMM technology, right? That is available on all the servers, right? That lets us simply layer on top of that, layer our value on top of that, but exploit those capabilities.
For years, it was everybody standardized on 1 gig, then 10 gig. Now, of course, in the environments, people are looking at 20, 25, 50, 100 gig networks. And whether today that's becoming more the norm, especially when it comes to data services, because you're wanting to take advantage of optimization of either dedupe, compression, and if you're looking at these type of data capabilities, you're also looking at how do we take advantage of the NVDIMMs of the world. And the only way to actually take advantage of this stuff is to have high performant, low latent networks.
Right. Especially as we...
Related to this right there is, we talked about a set of different technologies, but on the networking side, what is it that a Datera HPE solution needs in order to deliver this 200, sub 200 microsecond latencies and the IOPS that are needed? What's required?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go into that, right? Part of it is the customer likely has a network we fit into, right? What we need to make sure is we provision the appropriate network resources, right? Storage systems, a lot of people don't know this, right? They create I/O amplification, just by definition, right? And so oftentimes if I have a 10 gig pipe coming in, I might need a 40 gig pipe on the back end to make sure I can facilitate all the I/O on the back. And so we do things like layer 3 networking, right? So layer 3 lets us do recovery and discovery in, well, say millisecond sort of numbers instead of second sort of numbers, right? So used to be, I had something go bad, right? It might take 30 seconds to recover that.
That's an impressive part for the audience needs to know about like BGP peers. Datera nodes can become a BGP peer. That's imperative for resiliency, for data services to be resilient in order to actually understand the route trees, going beyond spanning tree.
And so there's a lot of networking integration that we think about there, and again, it's the customer has a network. Right. You don't get to say, here's your new corporate network. Right. You get to say, here's how we fit into your corporate architecture.
Right, because you want to be able to you want to be able to take a technology, minimize the disruption. We don't require Mellanox, or we don't require 100 gig networks. We look at what is the business requirements, what are the actual application requirements, and that could drive the technology requirements. So if they're looking to do an AI workload with machine learning and feed a GPU machine, we're going to be looking at 100 gig because the GPUs, you got to feed the beast. But if maybe you're not looking at those type of workloads, your workload's general purpose in nature, general purpose performance scale out storage, then if you're already got 20 gig networks, we could take advantage of this 20 gigs. If of course the latencies will be affected, but the question becomes, where's the value? And what is the actual driver that we're trying to solve for? If we're trying to shoot for a 200 microsecond, then we need to have those discussions.
Well, and some of the technologies that we have within Datera is we can actually move the data to the workload.
Yes.
Right? So if I've got a very low latency workload, let's locate that data in close proximity from a latency perspective to the consumer.
Go back to that policy engine and have the asymmetrical approach to going horizontal with the actual spread out of racks. You could have a density optimized storage server in one rack, rack 4, whereas rack 1 has the performance optimized, and that's where your actual high performance low latent network may be. And to your point, the policy goes back to your orchestration level. The orchestration level defines a policy and assigns that data path so that data path is ensured.
Right. Well, that goes somewhat back to our rapid technology adoption, right? So it's multimedia, right, inherently, and it's the right media for the right cost, right performance, those sort of things. The other key aspect is we have this notion of what we call asymmetric scale out. You've used the word asymmetry a number of times. It's really how much of a new technology or a technology do I need to solve the problem? As opposed to the system says the minimum number is 5 nodes of perfectly balanced, perfectly identical storage or servers, right, to get the first byte. We don't need that, right? It's add 1 node, add the appropriate number of nodes.
You said it best. I heard when we first started having these discussions, the heterogeneity of the platform, the ability to look at apply the right infrastructure for the right value you're shooting for.
And if you guess wrong, right, you can change.
You can change.
Right, that's one of the key. We've talked about data center awareness. This is, it's really multi-tenant, network integration, and default domains, right? We have to understand, and this is where things like InfoSight make a big difference, right, is what is the fault domains of the application, right? And then how does the storage, networking, and server infrastructure support that? And
I think if I drive back to the InfoSight conversation aspect, look at the global learning aspect. So for the audience out there, InfoSight from HP, the intelligent infrastructure aspect, really goes around to look at the install base. We have millions of servers deployed, and of these millions of servers in the entire install base that are bringing that telemetry back, letting us know the actual telemetry KPI on versions, driver interoperability, operating system versions, and when we detect problems, when we detect vulnerabilities, risk to disruption of a customer's enterprise, we're able to take that, create rules engines, and feed that back to customers in the install base. So one customer's issues could be the benefit of all customers. So they're understanding that if you're running your Datera platform and you're running whatever the operating system is with a VMware client connected in, you're able to take advantage of that insight. And it goes back to that preventive capability. So one problem seen fixes the entire install base. And it's about getting that time to value, that time to action collapsed, and benefiting all of our customers.
Yeah, I think that really touches on this last bullet of predictive operations, right? How am I understanding what's going on in the system? There's even our own system generates gigabytes of telemetry data, right? And let alone everything else in the environment. Right? The customer cannot make sense of that, right? You have to have those analytics, especially in a lot of modern applications, are built on microservices or cloud native or DevOps, right? Whatever way you want to talk about it.
And most customers don't want to design their own training engine. You're using an elk stack or capabilities. They want to be able to look at, let's let the infrastructure companies, ourselves, Datera, figure out what the training engine should be in an AI type of world, and build an inference engine. The inference engine creating that insight back to the users.
Right. So you meet with probably more customers than I'm guessing 99% of the engineers out there in the world.
I meet with a lot.
So. We talk about a lot of these values. How does that map to the problems they're facing, right? I mean, whether it be the ability to move data around or to deliver the performance. I always come back to it as customers. They have 2 answers to the questions, right? One is I don't know, and all of the above. Meaning, What do you need? All of the above.
Right, and it goes back to, what is the compelling driver? What is the actual obstacles to change, the compelling drivers for what is the business trying to solve for? And we look at, if you look at, I think agility is a key element here, because if you look at the technical debt of these ecosystems and infrastructures and operations, they're wanting to essentially become a service provider to the business. So if they're becoming a service provider to the business, they're looking at ways that they can embrace, I'll call it cloud management platforms, but you need to be thinking operation, orchestration. And that orchestration could be done by many different vehicles, but it provides a way to make an API call to our ecosystem to provide us as a service mentality. So all of a sudden, the IT operations become essentially IT as a service, and they're being an IT service provider back to the business. And then they're able to take that, collapse that into our HPE GreenLake models for financial consumption. So now you can consume it and pay by the SIP. So not only are we optimizing the capability of deployment, but we're also optimizing the business's ability to pay by the SIP.
So one of the things I think we try to promote a little bit within here in Datera is the notion of being agile, right, is more than an API veneer over the top of the product, right? It's really built into the core architecture of the product to say, I can change anytime without disruption. I can deploy across rows, across racks, across data centers. It's really saying, how do I map to the level of change the customer encounters every day in order to run their business?
I like what you said there, because it's so true. You guys, you didn't bolt an API onto the actual platform. It's actually, it's built from the foundation up.
Right. So I think we've covered a lot about the strength of HP and the partnership that HP and Datera have, and then quite a bit of detail around how HP and Datera work together to deliver this fungible, flexible, agile.
Let's do a call to action. I mean, if you're a customer out there, if this is resonating with you, reach out to an HP channel partner, an HP or Datera directly. Reach out. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can actually solve some of the business challenges you're having.
Great.
So one question that's coming in is, there are many, and I saw this in some IDC data recently, that are considering moving back from the cloud. That doesn't mean they come back on-prem, only on-prem, but why are people considering this, and would this be the type of environment that I would be thinking about, or should be thinking about?
Well, I think there's a number of different factors of why they might come back, right? There's always a fear factor, right? How is my data being used? That sort of thing. Yeah. There is a lock-in factor. I call it the microservices drug, right? Once you consume a cloud microservice, you're hooked on them. And now the operational expense of running on that cloud may start to become burdensome. Oftentimes, customers, especially a lot of HP's customers, operate at a scale, right? Where they can operate, quote unquote, their own cloud, right, and be more cost effective and have much greater control.
A lot of our enterprise customers are having the challenge. They're looking at, the cloud is, there's workloads that work fine in the cloud, but there's workloads that, because of their very nature of CPU consumption, GPU consumption, or maybe it's a workload consumption off the network, it's a death by 1,000 cuts, because you're metered on all these aspects that all of a sudden now the business is starting to consume VMs at thousands of VMs, thousands of CPU cores, and that becomes a challenge for the business to be able to operationalize at a cost factor. So they're looking at, let's bring certain workloads back on premise so that we can actually get the computation and the storage closer, so that we can actually deliver our value in a shorter time period.
But with a cloud-like experience, right?
That's essential, because now the business is hooked on that, because they do like those microservices, a service catalog that clicks a button. It's just, where is the execution of that platform?
Yeah, now that I think the IT organization has successfully disconnected the what from the how. Right? Used to be that when a department came and said, I want an application, you started a project, said, how many servers do I need, how can, all this stuff. Now it's, I deliver it as a service. Yeah. How we deliver that service is not your concern, right? So long as we meet your quality of service objectives.
Enterprises are shifting from, I heard this said to me recently, it's shifting from a configuration management aspect, CMDBs. If you're in a large enterprise, you know what I'm talking about here with a CMDB. But shifting from a CMDB to a CMDB becomes a pillar of an OMD orchestration. OMDB, operationalized management database, where an operationalized has the policies, and you're able to take those policies and map them to appropriate technologies that provide infrastructure, whether that be a cloud ecosystem, whether that be an on-premise cloud. but the how becomes essentially a profile, and that profile is delivered by a rich data services platform.
Well, and I think what the ultimate answer is, I use some mixture.
Yes.
Right. Cloud where it makes sense, whether it be private or public, right? And kind of internal service-oriented architectures.
Part of our core strategy, simplify hybrid IT. We believe it to our core.
Yep.
And the follow-on question that came in is this only an on-prem solution? Is Datera HPE an on-prem solution only, or is this a hybrid solution? I mean, we've got all these terms out there, multi-cloud, you can take your pick.
Well, the answer is everything is multi-cloud anymore, because that's the way the customer thinks about it. Yeah. Now the question is, what's the right place for their data, and what's the right place for their applications? I personally try to look at things from a data point of view, not an application point of view, because oftentimes today, data is used by many different applications. Yep. Right? So if you're data-centric, right, oftentimes that's going to dictate where's the best place to put it.
Yeah, so the platform does facilitate both. But to your point, I mean, it goes back down to the simplification of the paradigm. Business requirements drive, the business requirements, of course, drive the application requirements. The application requirements drive the technology adoption and requirements. So once we understand that paradigm, then we can assess where do we deploy. But where it can be deployed, that is an easy answer. We can deploy it anywhere. Problem is, what makes more sense to the value of the business?
Well, I mean, we talked about one of our use cases is digital first enterprises, right? Oftentimes they're collecting mass amounts of data, right? And the edge, right? Yes. They need to analyze it at the edge because it simply can't move it. Right?
Well, data has so much mass. Moving it from if you're a large dispersed company that has edge sites all over the world, then look at the producers of data. The producers of data, whatever that producer may be, is creating gigs, terabytes, petabytes of data. Shifting that back to a core, back to a cloud becomes, it just cost prohibitive. So the question becomes, how can we enable analytics at the side, at the edge? This is a platform that facilitates us being able to take the data, manage that data, manage the operations, manage the actual applications, and facilitate the business outcome.
Okay, that's great. So with that, I want to thank, first of all, everyone who was able to join us today. Thank you for your time. And I also want to say thank you very much to Chris Tinker and Hal Woods for their perspective. And if any of this has been interesting to you and you want to learn more, that's what we're here for. So with that, I'm Chris Cummings, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Learn more about how Datera on HPE servers brings the software-defined revolution to enterprise storage at datera.io/HPE. And contact Datera at hpe@datera.io.